everybody. Wow, it's been a while. I know I shouldn't say that. I should just be like, no, it's not been a while. It's not been a minute, but it has. Let's be honest. Welcome to Jedi Toy Masters Star Wars Car Talk. Oh my gosh, I can't even remember the last time I did this. I know. People do this all the time. They start a podcast and they're consistent at first, and then they kind of stop. And I fell victim to it, but a lot happened, a lot life and a lot of stuff. So, but we're back. The important thing is that we're back, or I'm back, and you're here with me. Star Wars Car Talk. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I have been thinking and brewing about and brewing, like I'm brewing beer. No, I'm just mulling over a lot of stuff that has happened in the Star Wars community, a lot of stuff that's happened that's in just the Disney Star Wars era, behind the scenes, on the screen, and I'm just gonna go off the cuff here because I want to comment a little bit on it. So if you're joining me for the first time, this is a podcast. It's audio podcast and also a video podcast. So you can check it out here on YouTube. And on our YouTube channel, it's not just this podcast, and not just me rambling in a car talking about Star Wars by myself. Well, not by myself, because you're here with me. But it's like, we also have other videos, and you'll see if you go to our YouTube channel, unless you're there already, you can check out some of our toy unboxings, some of our reviews, some of our random funny videos of just everything that has to do with Star Wars and toys and everything in between. We're a Star Wars family. I have 3 little Padawans, and this is what we do. We love Star Wars, and this is kind of like our outlet for this thing that we love, that I loved as a child, and then I get to share with my little ones. But we're going to talk a little bit about Disney Plus and all the shows and things that have come out, and kind of where I stand on a lot of this stuff, especially the latest installment of Star Wars on television, the Acolyte, and a little bit about movie news and what I think about this movie news that has been floating around. And then lastly, I want to touch a little bit on just the Star Wars community and the Star Wars fandom, and this really, I don't want to call it silly, because call it silly is to downplay it like it's not serious. It is serious because there's people involved, and their feelings and reputations and even livelihoods. So yes, I'm going to talk about this whole YouTuber, Star Wars influencer battle royale that's been taking place, and just the attacks and the bullying and all that stuff, and just my take on it. But for starters, it's Jedi Toy Masters, so let's start with toys. I recently visited an Ollie's, and I don't know if you're unaware with Ollie's. Ollie's is kind of like a discount store. It's like some places, there are stores called National Liquidators. There's also a store, when I grew up, there was a store called Odd Job, which was just weird, or Odd Lot, something like that. And it was just kind of like a discount store. There's Amazing Savings. That's like another type of discount store. So Ollie's is kind of like one of these chain discount stores. I frequent it because it's in a little shopping area that we often visit. Me and my boys will go straight to the toy aisle, because in the past, you see a lot of discounted toys, not just Star Wars, a lot of other, discounted toys that are of interest to us. My recent visit, and I posted it on our Instagram account, Jedi Toy Masters, they had so many Black Series figures on clearance, and they had an entire lot, or a few lots, of vintage archive collection, that are on the bubble, and then they had an entire entire wall almost of retro carded figures, the retro line. So many retro figures, and all of them are from the Obi-Wan show. It's just amazing. And a few Bo-Katans, like from The Mandalorian, but Obi-Wan retro collection figures. Tons of Revas. I don't think I've ever seen so many Reva figures. I mean, I could believe it, but when you see it, you're just like, oh my gosh. Because it's kind of sad in a way, because, as a kid, it was like, I mean, as a kid and even as an adult. Like, I think my brother and I, who also is like, loves Star Wars, and we kind of got into the toy game together. Like, that's like the dream, you know, right? Like, as a kind of fan of the Star Wars toys or any type of toy, the dream is to like, and I think I've even had actual dreams, and my brother has had actual dreams of like walking into a toy section or a toy aisle and seeing like all the Star Wars toys that you can grab, like on clearance or something like that. And you're just like, oh my gosh, and you just start grabbing. So on the one hand, it's like, you kind of get that feeling that you just see all this clearance. I mean, they had Black Series figures were marked down to $10, and all the 3 3/4 inch figures are $3.99, $4 basically, which is amazing, because in the back of all of our minds, we're always kind of like thinking that's really what they should cost. I mean, I know these companies need to make money, but that's really what they should cost. Like 6-inch figures should be $10, and 3 3/4 inch figures should be like $4 or $5. I mean, of course, you know, we're thinking about what they used to cost back in the day, so we kind of think that's what they should cost, but inflation and all that, but whatever. Which leads me to my next thing, which I was at our Walmart recently, and I started seeing tons of Acolyte figures, Black Series, all the characters. Like, the show just came out and ended in the beginning of summer, and yet the figures were already out, like not even a month after the show ended. Which, why wasn't that the case when like The Mandalorian came out? Or why haven't we gotten any Bad Batch toys when we had how many seasons of Bad Batch, The Bad Batch? And like, personally, I love that animated show. My kids love it, and we did get the 6-inch figures of the Bad Batch, but like no 3 3/4 inch, and they would always come out way after the show season ended. But for the Acolyte, all this stuff came out right away, which kind of begs the question, like I feel like on all fronts, Disney and, you know, Lucasfilm or whatever, they were really pushing for this show to be a success. I think this was their beta, and I'm kind of transitioning now into talking about the TV shows and the Acolyte. I feel like this show was the beta for what they want Disney Star Wars to be, which is a little bit more progressive and a little bit more kind of, I don't even know, like, I don't know what they're going for. It's just so interesting. And I recently came across a video. Now, are you allowed to like this show? Yeah. If you liked it, good for you, man. I'm glad you liked it. I personally did not like it. I did like certain things about it, but overall, after the first episode, my boys stopped watching it, and I kind of was okay with it. And I told them, well, you know, I'll keep watching it, guys. And if it gets really good, then we'll watch it. I'll watch it from the beginning again with you. Because I also, as a parent, let's be honest, as a parent, you got to watch even kid stuff. You got to like sometimes watch it before your kids watch it to make sure that there isn't any weird messaging or nonsense in it. Let's be real. And so I did that with the Acolyte, you know, just to make sure that it was, you know, appropriate for their age, you know, not anything, that there wasn't anything, you know, like a Kylo Ren shirtless. But, you know, I just, man, I wanted to like this show. I thought it was really interesting because it's like, finally, we're getting something that's Star Wars that has absolutely nothing to do with any of the established canon. You know, like, I feel like all of the shows have been taking place in the same era, 6 years after Return of the Jedi. And then you have the sequel trilogy that's way further ahead. And then you have like the Bad Batch, which is a direct sequel to Clone Wars. But this Acolyte show takes place literally like, you know, I don't know how many years before The Phantom Menace. So this is like a completely new era that we've not explored in live action. So I thought that was really interesting. And I'm not that familiar with the High Republic, and I'm definitely not really that familiar with the Old Republic, which, kind of, I don't know if it came first or if it's not canon anymore, but I always found it interesting. Like, this is like the era of the Knights of the Old Republic and the Knights of the Round Table kind of thing, and Excalibur and kind of medieval, I thought this is going to be really cool to explore. And I was envisioning the Acolyte to really be a lot darker and more like in the vein of like a Game of Thrones / Lord of the Rings, kind of show. Like I was really envisioning it being very down and dirty, and the Jedi, really in their prime, defending and fighting evil forces. And I didn't know. I mean, I was just imagining, and I think a lot of times, unfortunately, with a property like Star Wars, what we envision, what we imagine sometimes is way better than what we actually get. And so there's always this sense of disappointment. So you kind of have to always have your anticipation in check. And I tried to have it in check. I went into it with an open mind, but right after the first episode, I was just like, what is this? Like, where are we going with this? Who is this character? Why does she have to be a twin? It's just a lot of unnecessary story elements that I just feel like were obstacles for us as the audience to get around. Did she have to be a twin? Like, did you have to have this actress play both characters? Like, could you have hired actual twins? Like, I just don't understand a lot of it. Some stuff I did like, I thought was kind of cool. Like the character that plays the apprentice of the main Jedi, and you gotta excuse me, I've only watched the series once, and I have like no recollection of like a lot of these names of these characters. Like, that's how kind of like forgettable these characters are. That I think Osha is like one of the main characters, and Nia. I'm I don't even know. I can't even remember. But the little apprentice character, who actually she's like X-23 in Logan, and she's in, spoiler alert, she's in Deadpool and Wolverine. Like, she was my favorite character in the whole show. Like, I thought she was interesting because like she was like this feisty, smart, like overachiever apprentice Jedi. And it was kind of like how when we first met Ahsoka, and everybody was kind of like, oh, who is this little brat, And she kind of won us over. Well, this character I felt like was like that, was like a kind of a counterpart to that. And so I was looking forward to seeing this character develop, and then they kill her off. Like, they kill off like all the Jedis that there's toys for them now are all dead. Spoiler alert, guys, if you have not seen The Acolyte, and if you haven't seen it, I don't know. I don't even know that I can't recommend it. If you want to watch it, that's fine, but I can't recommend it. Yeah. But yeah, the show was all over the place. It just, a lot of it didn't fit, and I couldn't really, like, I have had a really hard time putting it to words, like why I didn't like it, because I feel like there's so many opinions out there, and there's certain people in the fandom and in the community that if you don't like The Acolyte, they assume that, oh, well, you don't like it because, and then they start throwing these terms like, well, then you don't like this type of person, and you don't like this type of story. And it's like, that's not it. I mean, there's preference. Like, there's a type of story that I would prefer. I mean, I think the reason Star Wars worked was because there was a formula to it. It was the hero's journey. The reason all these stories work is because they're based on a formula of why certain stories work and certain character arcs work. And this show didn't really have any of that. I don't feel like it did. And I found a YouTuber that I think I'm gonna link him below, because if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm gonna link him below, because he hit the nail on the head. Like, listening to him talk about this show and why the writing didn't work. Ultimately, it came down to the story and the writing. Like, you can't blame the actors. You can't blame the ILM and the special effects team. I think a lot of the special effects look great. Although, a lot of times when you can tell that when they're relying a lot on the volume, using the volume, you can tell that they're relying too much on it, and spaces that are meant to look big and vast don't, you know? Unfortunately, like, it's having this adverse effect on our perception of space, like the area. But this YouTuber, and I can't remember his name, I'm gonna link him below, he made this video about like why the Acolyte should be retconned. Ultimately, it came down to, I feel like this show left a bad taste in a lot of our mouths, because ultimately it was like the bad guys won and nobody learned any lesson. Nobody grew as a person. Nobody overcame and transferred to something good. He talks a lot, this reviewer talks a lot about truth and how there was really no truth in this show. It was all just her story and his version of the story. Like, we literally got like different versions of a story, and we're supposed to make up the truth. We're supposed to figure out where the truth lies. Like, that, a good story shouldn't, I don't know, it didn't sit right at all with me. It wasn't fun. There was nothing fun about this show. Like, I didn't have fun watching it. It felt like a chore getting through every episode and trying to figure out, like, where is this going? Like, why should I care about these characters? Why should I care where this is going? Like, why should this matter? All these, the creator and the writers or whatever, Leslie Henlin or whatever, like, they're all going to say the same thing. They're going to be like, oh, well, yeah, in the season 2, we were going to explain all that. It's like, yeah, but you shouldn't be counting on a season 2. Like, every great movie was made not expecting there to be a sequel. George Lucas made Star Wars kind of thinking this is going to bomb and but whatever, and then it was a hit. So then he had to scramble and be like, all right, well, I got to figure out how to continue this story. Like, The Matrix was a hit, and then they had to go back and go, oh crap, how do we continue this story? Because these movies leave us on a happy ending, on a happy note, with hope and promise. And that's the other thing. Star Wars is about hope. This show had no hope. It literally had no hope, like, going into it and leaving the show, like, ending it, finishing it. It didn't end with hope. And that's just, you can like it, but you have to really look at it like, was this really a good Star Wars story? I had this thought of when Disney said that they were going to make a sequel trilogy, and in between the sequel trilogies, they were going to do these Star Wars stories. Like Rogue One was a Star Wars story. Obi-Wan was supposed to be, first it was supposed to be a movie, and then they were like, well, we'll make it a Star Wars story. I remember them even saying how the Boba Fett was going to be a Star Wars story. Like, these were supposed to be like these little Star Wars stories that were either going to be a TV show or a movie. And I thought that was a cool concept. And I feel like Disney has not done that. Rogue One was like really the only Star Wars story that we actually got. Solo was supposed to be like a Star Wars story, but Solo just suffered from, all the behind the scenes nonsense of different visions and different creators coming on and leaving and all that. On top of the fact that, after The Last Jedi, everybody was just kind of in a daze. and then, Solo came out way too fast. Like, Solo needed to have been released in December. I thought the idea was to have a movie come out every December, and then Solo was released in May, and that kind of threw it off. But anyway, The shows also suffered from this. There's no Star Wars story. Obi-Wan was kind of weird. It was fun. It had some great moments. But when you really look at it, when you really think about it, it looked cheap. They relied way too much on the volume, and man, it suffered from it. You can tell. Book of Boba Fett, I think, suffered from it just not being the Book of Boba Fett, because Boba Fett seemed to was kind of like the weakest character in the show. Unfortunately, it was really poorly written. Then Ahsoka comes along, and man, Ahsoka again, we have this idea of what the Ahsoka show should be, and you see all these characters from Star Wars Rebels, and I'm a huge Star Wars Rebels fan, so I'm like, wow, this is going to be great. World Between Worlds, holy moly, what are they going to do? And I think all of our theories, all of our Star Wars theories, pun intended, and no amount of Star Wars explaining could make me at least think that the Ahsoka show didn't have a lot of misses. So yeah. Now we get to the Acolyte. And so we're already kind of exhausted, right? As fans, let's be honest, we're already kind of exhausted. We're looking for a home run here. I want to feel like how I felt with The Mandalorian season 2. That was amazing. Or when I first watched Rogue One, I'm like, man, that was amazing. I haven't had that in a while. So the Acolyte had a lot to live up to. Unfortunately, it had that against it. And then it just hits you with this story that, man, I'm sorry, but I don't know. Maybe it was the timing. Maybe it was a lot of things, a lot of factors that weren't playing out in its favor. But I think ultimately the writing was not good. The story was not good. And man, that cheap Yoda cameo at the end, spoiler alert, guys, was cheap. It was just cheap and almost like a smack in the face, I feel like. After watching this entire show, waiting for something, you get these two I said it again, little cameos. You have a Yoda cameo at the very end, and then you have a Plagueis cameo. And unless you are a diehard Star Wars fan, the casual person watching this, let's see this Star Wars show, they have no idea who Darth Plagueis is or what he looks like or that that's him. So it's just man, no, come on. That was way too cheap and just no. So all that to say, the Acolyte, a huge thumbs down for me. Again, if you liked it, that's fine. I didn't like the Clone Wars when I first started watching it. And then I regretted it, and then I had to go back and rewatch it and go, man, this is actually a really good show. And there's some episodes and story arcs in Clone Wars, the animated show, that are kind of weak, man. It's that first season is a slow burn, but then it gets really good. Star Wars Rebels had its ups and downs as well. I get it. They had multiple seasons. They got to play around with it. But when you're spending this much money on a show, don't tell me that, season 2 was going to answer all those questions and season 2 was going to really get into it. And no. You should have gotten into it with the season that you got. An animated show does not cost the same as this live action show. So you can't compare that. So that argument is kind of weak. But yeah, I'm sorry. I just didn't like it. So I didn't like it. But I'm not bullying the people that did like it. I find that the people that, I don't want to say the people. I want to say a lot of Star Wars fans that enjoyed The Acolyte and have a platform seem to be looking down and really laughing at and criticizing those of us that didn't like The Acolyte. And then the Acolyte doesn't get renewed for a season 2, and all of a sudden that it becomes it's our fault. The people that didn't like it, it's your fault that it didn't get a season 2. No, I paid for my Disney Plus subscription. I paid already to watch the show, and I watched it. A lot of people that are criticizing this show they reviewed the show. Like, they watched the show. Like, that show got their views. So, you know, it gets kind of, this is the part of the fandom this is the part of the episode that I like to call, you know, because I love Star Wars, and when we started our YouTube channel here, and we're a small channel, guys, we're like a little tiny dot of a channel compared to a lot of these other Star Wars channels on YouTube, and even our social media, like our Instagram account, we're like a small Instagram account. As small as we are, I started it as a way, as an outlet for me and my boys to kind of show our love of Star Wars and be part of the Star Wars community. And we've been met with nothing but love from Star Wars fans, especially in the toy community. Like, we've been sent cool stuff. We've been included in like live streams and, you know, conversations with other people on social media. You know, and even on YouTube, like, you know, we don't have the biggest following with the most views, but, you know, we get very nice comments, and I've been happy with the reception of being a Star Wars fan and being part of the Star Wars community. But then when I hear about all this ugliness taking place, and specifically with, like, you know, some of the biggest Star Wars influencers, if you want to call them that, because they have huge followings, and when you see like the drama amongst a lot of these creators and other creators, it's like, you know, it's saddening. It's hard. It's you know, it's so sad, because it's like, man, you know, you're talking about Star Wars, like something that we're supposed to love. We're supposed to really, you know, care about. This is something from our childhood. You know, we all kind of came into Star Wars at a different place in our lives, different time periods, different movies were our entry point, whether it's the sequels or the prequels or the original trilogy. And it's great that we're like, literally, there's generations of fans. You know, it's an amazing thing to love a story and love characters, and it's become like almost like an American legend, American folklore. You know, so to belittle and criticize somebody for not liking one part of it, because in the grand scheme of things, the Acolyte is a tiny little part of it, you know. And if I didn't like it, it doesn't mean I'm not a Star Wars fan. It just means I didn't like this. Because the fact is, if I wasn't a Star Wars fan, I wouldn't have continued to watch it. Like, why would you watch something that you just don't like? I've started shows on Netflix, and after the first episode or two, I'm like, nah, I'm not continuing this. I don't like it, you know? But with Star Wars, as a fan, like, you feel like you have to keep watching it, you know? So we did watch it, and those of us that didn't like it, we just didn't like it. And you can't deny, because even people that do like it have a lot of creators have had to admit, hey, yeah, the writing wasn't that great. Yes, like, the writing wasn't that great with the prequels, but there's a huge following of people that love it, and there's a lot of people that don't love it. There's a lot of people that don't even, like, have never watched the prequels after their original theatrical run, and they don't really ever go back and revisit them. Does that mean they're not Star Wars fans? No, they like the original trilogy, and they like the expanded universe and the novels and maybe even the games and stuff like that. And that's it. That's their Star Wars. Like, Star Wars is like a thing that you make it your own. Like, the things that you like about Star Wars. Like, my Star Wars is the original trilogy. Yes, the sequel trilogy, and some of the shows. You know what I mean? And like some of the movies, but not all of the movies. So not all the characters are my favorite characters, and that's fine. So you're not less of a person for liking something, and you're not less of a person for not liking something. But when we accuse people of being things that they're not in order to silence them, or it's a slippery slope that we're going on, and it's unfortunate. But, you know, I'll admit, yes, there are people that are making a lot of money off Star Wars, and there's a lot of people making money off hating Star Wars and talking trash about other people, but that's in everything. That's just the swamp that is YouTube sometimes, where yes, you're gonna see a patch of grass and some flowers, and it's gonna be really nice over here. And then there's another part of YouTube where it's like a dark, swampy nastiness that you don't want to go there. And so, yeah, that's basically it. So, guys, I didn't want to make this video or this podcast episode so long, but it was anyway. I'm going to try to edit this down a little bit. But if you have any more comments or questions for me, or just comments like, hey man, why didn't you like the Acolyte? What about this, that, and the other? I'd love to hear it. Like, yeah, tell me what you liked about it. I did like some things about it. I like the idea of it. I like the fact that you got to see like the Jedi almost be like samurais, and I like the idea that I like that little character. I forgot her name. I'm gonna put a picture of her right here, like she's sitting next to me, because that was like my favorite character. I thought she was great. We got a couple videos coming up on our YouTube channel. We got some toy reviews coming up. I got something really interesting I want to show the boys that is a Star Wars toy, but it also isn't. So that's a little teaser for a video that's coming up on our channel, unless it's there already by the time you're watching this. So check out some of our other videos. Let's start a conversation in the comments, and let's be polite, people. Let's be kind. Not everybody has to like what you like, and you don't have to like what everybody else likes. But just be understanding of that, Like, some people... I have a coworker. I mean, this is off topic, but it isn't. I have a coworker that recently revealed that she does not like the movie Grease. The John Travolta, Olivia Newton-John classic. And that is like one of my favorite movies of all time. Like, I have childhood memories of watching that movie. And to hear this person who I like, we're great friends and we're great coworkers, but to find out that she doesn't like Grease, like, I was like, oh my gosh, how do I maneuver? And I made a joke about it. I was like, I don't think I could be friends with you anymore if you don't like Grease. And she laughed. But yeah, like, there's people that don't like certain things. There's people that don't like Lord of the Rings. There's people that don't like Seinfeld, whatever. But then there's also, there's people that don't like Weekend at Bernie's 2. And you know what? I don't blame you. Weekend at Bernie's 2 was not good. Weekend at Bernie's, the original, was way better. Weekend at Bernie's 2, no good. But if you like Weekend at Bernie's 2, good for you. You enjoyed it. Hey, I watched it multiple times when it was out on cable. Once upon a time. If you haven't seen Weekend at Bernie's, you should revisit it because it's a classic. Not so much Weekend at Bernie's 2. But anyway, hope you like and subscribe. Hope you check out our other shows and episodes and things that we have on here. I keep saying we when it's really me, but some stuff, some of the shows, some of the videos my boys are in. So hit me up on Instagram at Jedi Toy Masters. And until then, guys, until the next time we meet, remember,
the Force will be with you, always.